Hi, Birch. Peace. Welcome. It's another morning. It's Thursday morning. It's actually June 16th. And I'm Candle Summers, if you don't know me. And most of you know each other, but there might be a few new people here. So I just want to say welcome to Portland Insight Meditation Community that's been in existence for many, many years on Duke Street in Portland, Oregon. But Sangha has kept together all through the pandemic online, thanks to Robert's morning efforts and all the other teachers, Jim, Doug, Gregory, Gary, and myself, who like seeing your shining faces in the morning. And may we take this time to continue the practice of looking at our hearts and minds clearly. I'm going to start with ringing a bell and letting this sound just come flowing to the ears. I see that I have original sound off. I think I'm going to reclaim host here and see if that helps any. All right. No, I can't have original sound on. Jim, do you have your bell there?
Yes, I do. Up in the left-hand corner. Oh, you don't have a PC. Okay.
Well, it always says off and then on, but mine right now does not go to on.
I'll ring mine.
All right. And then you'll hear mine clink at the end. But I'll say something so you'll know it's the end. Inviting the sound of the bell. Allowing this to be sound coming to the ears. We take some time to sit quietly, to begin to see what happens in the heart and mind. Taking a comfortable yet upright position, unless there's problems that happen with the body. Being upright in a chair or sitting on a cushion is the suggested sitting posture, but one can lay down. If you're sleepy, you can stand up. You can do a walking practice. And we also take this time to acknowledge the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, those who have gone before us and have seen for themselves that awakening is possible, that having the mind free and clear from suffering is an option. It's called taking refuge. And we're taking refuge where stability and security can be found. That's why they're called refuges. Wherever we are in our home, or if we were sitting in a Dharma hall, or in a temple somewhere, or wherever we take refuge, it can become a still place where the storms of life rage outside, winds and rains and snows and storms, but we take refuge also in the internal level, the contemplating mind, this temple of wisdom. The body holds us gently, grounded on our cushion or chair. Letting ourselves settle. And we take refuge in the Dhamma, the teachings that have been passed on, the teachings of life that we see directly. And as we take refuge in mindfulness being present and awareness coming to the fore, we begin to attune to the reality of things the way they are. We can begin to still the body and calm the mind. And so the weather can do whatever it's doing outside. And when the heart abides in the triple gem, the three refuges of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, then the world of senses and thoughts and feelings, the body can do what it likes. And it can sometimes rage away. We let the weathers occur, but the heart has found shelter. That's why it's a refuge. It's a reliable place. And we have the third of the triple gems, the Sangha, those in our circle here. All of those that have gone before us, lay people, nuns and monks. From in this Buddha's lifetime, 2,600 years ago, and other Buddhas before him, where the teachings have been passed down through verbal remembrance, generation to generation, and written, and then moved through many continents and countries and lands, adapting where it goes. But the teachings have stayed the same of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And so we take this time to hold ourselves gently and in compassion. To be with what arises. And we can let our wandering mind settle on a single object of the breath at the nostrils, or wherever you feel it the strongest. Maybe you feel it in the rising and falling of the diaphragm. Or you might feel coolness at the nostrils. On the inhale, noticing. Is it a short breath or a long breath? being present with the breath as it comes in, noticing that point of when the in-breath stops and there's a space, and then the exhale begins. And noticing the stopping of the exhale. And we may notice that the breath has its own natural rhythm. We don't change the breath. We're just with the breath, and we want to see clearly that it arises and that it passes away. Even if we wanted it to be a longer breath or a shorter breath, at some point, the breath breathing itself will get as full as it's going to get. Conditions have come together. That inhale has reached an end. And it becomes the exhale. This establishment at the breath, whether it's the nostrils or feeling of the diaphragm expanding and releasing, is a place that once we've begun to settle and we may notice discomfort in the body or busyness in the mind or sleepiness in the mind. Maybe sometimes doubt arises. Or we may notice grasping at something or trying to push something away. This place of the single object of our attention is a place to return to help ground ourselves once again in the present moment. We can also notice a sit point, a touching point of the buttocks on the cushion or chair, or maybe where the arms are touching or the hands are touching in the lap. Allowing a gentleness, allowing a kindness for what's arising. Sometimes painful thoughts arise or painful places in the body happen. With mindfulness present, we can see this clearly, be with it. We can notice it just like the breath. Conditions have come together to create what's happening in the present moment. We notice it, we stay with it, we know it through its fullness, and we can notice at some point, perhaps it's changed. Sensations can arise in the body of tingling or warmth. Any number of sensations are perceived. We're with them with mindfulness, with a kind of gentleness, relaxing in this container of our body breathing. There's no feeling of wrongness. When our heart takes refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, everything belongs. And we can adapt, be open-hearted, and acknowledge that this is the way it is. And this is a wholesome activity that we're taking, this decision to be with ourselves and each other in Sangha, to see clearly that things come together. They are impermanent, and we see this clearly with our direct experience. They come together and they fall apart. They come together and they fall apart over and over again. And we practice doing this with ourselves. And we can also begin to realize over time that in the bigger world outside of us, this is also the way things are. Coming together and falling apart. And seeing this clearly brings happiness. It can bring gladness to the mind that we are able to see clearly what arises and passes away. As we awaken some of the dullness in the corners of our mind, or some of the confusion in the corners of our mind, by seeing this clearly, this awakened mind can see the way things are, and it can respond with skillful action and unselfish action. And so moment by moment, we hold ourselves gently and kindly in the security of this triple gem, the possibility of awakening, understanding the truth of the way things are, and having the larger Sangha of all those practicing worldwide, as well as our own sangha of support. It's a natural process. Earth and air, fire and water, the elements of our body come together. We do our best to sit still. Returning to the breath. If the mind has wandered off into repetitive thinking or places that seem to be unskillful for being mindful in the present moment. And we notice. If we have judgment about that, we just let that go. And we just begin again. What is happening right now? What is the attitude of the mind and the heart? Without a conversation about it, just an acknowledgement. Returning to the breath or the touch point of the body. Noticing if there's busyness in the mind or dullness in the mind. Just for now, this short amount of time, we put aside everything else and be present with what is. Resting the heart and mind in mindfulness, resting in awareness. And as mindfulness gets established and awareness arises, wisdom naturally takes hold. It allows us to see whether something that arises might be unskillful, and we can let it go and incline more toward the skillful. As part of the qualities of the awakened heart, patience seems to be a big one. And we can Notice and encourage patience. It can be a steady force that supports us during times of trial and stress in our lives. And we can cultivate some of these beautiful qualities of the mind, the paramis. This patience, along with mindfulness, can train us in a way of being non-reactive and help us in our relationship of seeing things the way they actually are. We can incline ourselves toward this intention, this right intention of patience. Patience can sometimes help us deal with checking our emotional reactions. It's not a denial of that emotional intelligence, but patience has this gut knowledge that recognizes that a problem or a pain is not something to run away from, get flustered by, or be in self-pity about. With wisdom, it has the wisdom to know that we can prioritize our steps in a way to resolve suffering. It helps us not react, not fall into extremes. Patience and equanimity can be a place that we incline our hearts. can also use just the right amount of energy and effort to find interest in what's happening right now. As we use patience to step back a little to know that this is what's arising and it's staying for a certain amount of time and passing away. We just call upon energy and interest. And this awakening to each moment gives us encouragement to investigate, to see what's happening. But it's not an intellectual discourse. It's just being present with what's arising, letting our attention connect with it and stay with it, be sustained until conditions are no longer present and they fall apart. And patience can hold us present with whatever arises, pleasurable or painful. We can hold it all in a spacious way, encouraging our hearts and mind to open. Developing this spacious and more open mind feels more peaceful in itself and can more readily see into the causes of its suffering. We stay with whatever's arising without any expectation that it will go away. It allows us to give up expectations and allow the mind to be serene and equanimous with whatever's occurring. This kindness and this patience with ourselves is a kind of acceptance that recognizes the presence of something without adding anything to it or covering it up. And our practice is supported by insight that when our mind stops fidgeting and whining and blaming, then suffering can be understood. This dukkha, this suffering, stirs up hatred and greed and despair, and it's through practicing the Dhamma, the truth of liberation and freedom, that its energy and emotional current can be stopped, and reactivity isn't the truth of the mind. We can see this more clearly. It's a conditioned reflex, and it's not our true nature. It's not self. And that's how we can begin to see that suffering can be undone and the mind can become free. Over and over again, just with being with the breath, or seeing what arises in the mind, or feeling what arises in the body, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. All these conditioned reflexes, we can begin to understand them as unreliable and all dependent on causes and conditions that come together. Nothing real, nothing solid. And so we're patient with them. Whatever arises, we see clearly with mindfulness, awareness, investigation, and wisdom. And we can begin to see and embrace understand that the world, including our own bodies and emotions, is unsatisfying and a bit of a mess. And this practice urges us to cross over it all, cross over the floods, as the saying goes. And this requires us to grow stronger and broader rather than hide or run away. And the process of bearing with the suffering isn't a punishment, but it's a voyage of growth. And it can actually bring gladdening of the heart and mind when we recognize the impermanent nature of things, that we can't cling and hang on to them, and they are not really ours. And with that development of patience with what arises, holding ourselves kindly through this messy process, we can begin to allow this heart and mind and breathing container of our body to hold ourselves more gently. Be patient and kind. Knowing that all of us wish to be happy, we can open our hearts to include others. A teacher, a benefactor, a friend. Holding them gently, knowing just as I wish to be happy, I know that you also wish to be happy. We can hold people that we don't know, a neutral person, someone you pass on the sidewalk on your walk, someone that you see going places at the grocery store or the gas station. If you don't get out much, maybe it's someone on your device. Everyone wishes to be happy. May we hold them in our hearts. May we especially have compassion for ourselves and for others when things are challenging. May we hold ourselves gently. May we be free from suffering. May we hold others in our hearts who are suffering, those who are victims of senseless acts of violence, those who are wandering and homeless, those who are sick and in pain, those who feel unseen by others. May those in sorrow, as well as those in joy, be held in our hearts. May we find space in our open hearts to include those in suffering and sorrow, those in happiness and joy, those beings enlightened and those beings unenlightened, beings who fly and crawl, swim, walk above and below the earth in all directions, to the north and the east, to the south and to the west. May all beings everywhere have happiness and the causes of happiness and be free from suffering. Anicca vata sankara upadewaya domino upakitawa meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. Conditions come together and fall apart. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness can bring the greatest happiness, which is peace. And may the goodness of our practice be of benefit to us and all beings. Thank you so much for your practice.